Hello everybody, welcome to the 46th episode of the Online Tennis Podcast. It's myself, Jack, and today we have two amazing guests with us. We have on my left, if you care to introduce yourself. You don't know what way is my left, obviously.
That's Vansh.
Yeah, Vansh can go first.
That would be me. So yes, I'm Vansh. I'm part of the Tennis and Bagels Podcast. It's a pleasure to be on this podcast. Big fan of it. Just witnessed one of the most incredible rivalries and 59th saga of this epic Djokovic and Nadal series, and super excited to talk about it, even though we're all pretty drained and we're all filled with a lot of emotions at the moment.
Yeah, I think we all feel the same way, Vansh. And our other guest, who has just been to the match live to watch it in person.
Hi, thanks for having me. I'm Owen. I write for Popcorn Tennis. I'm also on Tennis and Bagels, and yeah, this is my favorite rivalry in tennis. So it was mind-blowing to be able to be there. Absolute bucket list moment, and looking forward to breaking it down.
Yeah, thanks very much, guys, both for being here. Obviously, massive fans of the two of your works. Vansh is amazing at his statistical so's and so's on Twitter. Obviously, that's right up my street, so absolutely love it. Owen perspectives and stuff blows my mind quite often. Go check out both of their work whenever you can. Twitter's probably the best way to find them, so please give them a follow. Massive thanks for being here. Yes, today we are going to talk about Rafa and Djokovic's 59th meeting at the French Open. Rafa was victorious. I think the best place to start is maybe just a little rundown of what happened. Trying to cast my mind back to 4 hours, 10 minutes ago, or whenever it was. How did it start? Anybody want
to? I can get us started. So I think for the first hour and a half, it was peak Nadal. I mean, it was like every time he had a second of time, he would hit a forehand winner down the line. I didn't think Djokovic played badly. Like, he sort of did what he tried to do last year with the angled forehands. And I made a note here at one of the many deuces in the first game of the match. Djokovic hit his angled forehand, and Nadal kind of bashed a backhand back cross court, and then he got a forehand, went cross court, got another forehand, went down the line, and that forced the error. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, good things are going to happen to him for a while. And it was really one-way traffic. And then Djokovic got into the match in a big way. Vansh, do you want to...
I was going to say, I'll talk a little bit more about that sort of Rafa period of just like crazy dominance first, because as we say, the forehand angle cross court, it's kind of now revered as the reason for Djokovic's win last year, I guess. And I was certainly looking out for Nadal's way of countering that, I guess. Yeah. One of the biggest things for me was the way he used his backhand slice down the line to basically stop Djokovic, because last year when he tried to go down the line with the backhand, it was pretty tough when he was pulled so far off court to get it with enough purchase to stop Djokovic ripping it basically cross court. And using the slice kind of got you back to neutral. And that basically just was buying time until Rafa could get forehand, but that's what he does. Like, it works really well, and that's why we saw Rafa hitting. Well, it's not the only reason we saw Rafa exploding into the forehand so much more often than there was last year, but it's one of the reasons. Certainly, the forehand down the line, just in general, every time he got a chance to hit it. I mean, he could have hit it that well last year, but he just wasn't. This year, it was just absolutely phenomenal. That for me is a little bit of a difficult one to figure out, because it just looked like he was feeling it on the day for me. I don't know. Do you guys feel like he had more opportunities to hit it, and that's why he was hitting it that well?
I think he was able to take such a big control of the first set with two key shots. I would say his backhand cross court angle to Djokovic's forehand and dragging him off the court with it. And then every time they get into a neutral rally, just the first forehand that Rafa would get, he'd just take it down the line and just blast it for a winner. And it almost seemed like Nadal was the one with the superior speeds, when actually Djokovic was the one cranking his forehand and backhand both, to be fair. I mean, I think in the first set, I want to say, if we look at their topspin miles per hour on their ground strokes, Djokovic was actually averaging 5 more miles per hour on his forehand side, but it just didn't matter. Wow. Because Nadal's defense and his court coverage and his ability to neutralize the Djokovic forehand, both cross-court patterns, was just was just amazing because he was just not going to want to play defense, and in turn he ended up playing defense. But what happened is he used the slice, like you said, very well to counteract the cross court Djokovic forehand, and I thought he was either using the pattern changing slice down the line, or he was absolutely exploding in his cross court backhand and just getting an easy forehand after that on the third shot, and that was so key. And getting that break in the first game, I think, really fired him up.
And I felt like when there was that sort of change in momentum, obviously Nadal up 3-love, a double break. Obviously, on being in the stadium, you don't get a lot of these stats drip fed to you, but you may not have been aware Rafa won the first 15 juices of the match. I know, yeah, it's obviously. I know it's quite it's a mind-blowing stat. Like, obviously, there were so many lengthy games, but
yeah, I mean, that was the thing. I think in this rivalry, they usually play epic sets, like individual sets. But in this match, I thought there were epic games, like 7 or 8 times, like so many deuces, like back and forth. And I did think Nadal was having better success on big points than he was last year. But yeah, did not know that stat. And as for his forehand, I mean, on clay, it's the greatest shot in the history of tennis. Like,
1,000%.
He's got the down the line. I thought he was hitting really, really mean cross court angles the entire time. And then sometimes he would throw in a drop shot. Like, I have a note here from the 4th set that says Rafa with a forehand drop shot out of nowhere. It sucked, but Djokovic was so surprised that he didn't even chase it. Like, you just have to cover everything. And yeah, and I thought that his shot quality on his forehand went down a bit in the middle of the match, but I thought at the start of the match especially, and also at the end of the match, it was just phenomenal.
Yeah. So I felt like Novak never really had a chance to build the point with his forehand in general, which is why we never really saw him roll the forehand sort of cross court like he did last year. When I say that, sorry, so he didn't use that same pattern of plays he did last year. He was able to build the point with his forehand as the second set developed, but it was more because as Vansh said, he was totally flattening it out, basically. I felt like he kind of almost started going into Nadal's forehand, almost played him like he would play him on a hard court. It kind of felt like, you obviously remember the Australian Open final in 2019 when he was basically like barraging Nadal's forehand and Nadal couldn't do anything about it because of the speed. Basically, the ball was coming in at him on that wing, and it worked for a while. Do you know what I mean? Djokovic had all the momentum going into the third set, it felt like. But of course, out of nowhere, I don't know, that forehand down the line started firing again.
Yeah. Yes. I think in the second set, I mean, what Djokovic did in the second set, like he did use the forehands, like you said, but I thought the bigger thing for me was his return of serve in the second half of that second set was as good as I've ever seen anyone return. Like,
oh my god,
there was
once
in the middle of the 3-2 game, like Nadal was down 15-40 and he got out of that, and then it became a mini deuce game. And somewhere in the middle of that, Djokovic started hitting every single return hard, deep, heavy. Like, it was wild. Like, and it didn't stop until the end of the set. And in the middle of that, I started thinking, like, you know, Nadal has kind of stopped hitting his forehands down the line. What's that about? And then I figured out, like, he has no time to do anything at this point. All he can do is react. And of course, it could not last because Djokovic was, even for him, just returning at an absolutely incredible level, which is why I think the turnaround at the start of the third was so violent, because it couldn't last. But what he did in that 4 or 5 game stretch, I couldn't believe what I was seeing.
Yeah. I felt like, how often do we see Nadal like sort of bending down to scoop out a backhand like off the return? Like, it happened so often in that second set. It was crazy.
I totally agree with Owen on the return. That's a great point. And I think one of the things that he managed to do was he moved up his return position and he started absolutely clobbering the second serve. And that's something that he didn't do, I think. I don't want to be too critical of him, of course, because Nadal was coming up with big first serves. I think he came up with, on every single pressure point or like deuce point, or, you know, the break points that he did have, especially in the 1-2 game, he always came up with big first serves. And he always mixed up his location really well. And that threw Djokovic a bit off, because on the big points, he would always make his first serve and then he'd have a +1, or Djokovic would just miss the return. And I felt like he was ceding too much court on the return, and he was sort of standing way too far back on the second serve. And Nadal was winning, I think, 9 out of 12 second serve points at one point. But I think that started to flip after 6-2 3-love. It was 6-2, 3-love, 30-15, and Nadal was 2 breaks up. And then Djokovic just moved up on the return of serve. He started clobbering it. He started taking initiative on the return +1, and then he started getting the rallies more in his favor. And like you said, I mean, Nadal was basically having to react on almost every backhand and forehand from right from the return of Djokovic, and it was just he was the one reacting, and Djokovic was the one on the front foot, and that pattern continued for almost the whole set. And
Yeah.
Nadal, I think one of the turning points also was when Nadal didn't hold for 4-2 in the second set.
Yeah.
Because then I feel like there's a good chance he would have sort of stretched his lead, and he might have gotten into Djokovic's next service game. And next thing you know, we could have had a really competitive 6-2, 6-2.
Right.
But instead, we got a 6-2, 4-6. And I think the margins are just so slim in this matchup that way. And what we had was just really epic games that lasted over 18, 20 minutes on a stretch, and both guys sort of finding purple patches, and it was just one of those sets.
Yeah, Vansh, I'm glad you brought up that 3-2 game, because that was a really bizarre part of the match, because Nadal had about 1 million times, but he couldn't hold. And that was also when he started taking forever between every point. Like, I wasn't paying attention to the shot clock at first, but I was like, I could pick up on the fact that things were slowing down. And I was like, what the hell is happening here? Like, Rafa, what are you doing? And the time violation came way too late, to be honest, and he picked it up after that. But yeah, like every single serve was getting attacked. A few times later in the set, I think in the third or maybe the fourth, like he would go for a huge second serve, like 100 miles an hour, and it would still come back at his feet. It was like he was in hell. There was nothing he could do to stop his serve from getting destroyed. I don't know how he fought his way out of that, because it was horrible. I mean, this is his court. He's the most successful anyone's ever been on this court, and he was reduced to having to react to what his opponent was doing. Like that's how well Djokovic was returning.
Yeah, it's a really good way of putting it.
I kind of have a question for both of you. So, given what we said about that purple patch and return of serve, excellence as Djokovic showed in the second set, among other things, obviously. But do you think that set took so much out of him and so much out of his legs, both physically and emotionally? I mean, more so emotionally, and just kind of staying with Rafa and that maintaining that intensity, that he suffered a slight 1 or 2 point dip in his opening service game of the third. And when he was able to get back to deuce, I want to say it was 1-0, 40-15. Nadal was up, and it went back to deuce. And this is when Nadal was going for bigger second serves, because Djokovic was still sort of in the return mode from the second set. And I felt like that sort of patch in the middle is when Nadal really sort of stretched his lead. And then that third set, which I thought would end up being sort of a pivotal set in terms of, like I said yesterday on the podcast that we did for Tennis and Bagels, that whoever wins that third set, I think is going to win the match. And obviously that panned out. But it definitely seemed like Djokovic was leaving something to be desired sort of when that set was gone from him and Nadal stretched that lead. And you just knew he had so much left in the fourth. So that's why I think it's a shame for him that he couldn't close out that fourth set. But I think he did definitely have to sacrifice something at the start of the third, because of the sheer effort and willpower that he spent coming back from the incredible 1.5 sets that Nadal played to start the match. So
I feel like a bit of both, but basically I'll do a deeper dive into it, but what Owen said, it felt like Djokovic's level in return was so high, the only way was down, basically.
There was nowhere else it could go.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if that dip maybe kind of made a few other components of his game also dip, but it certainly felt like it wasn't sustainable, basically. Obviously, that's knowing Djokovic, maybe it could have been sustainable, but in hindsight, certainly, it felt like that was the case.
I mean, I agree with that. Like, again, even for Djokovic, like the returns he was hitting, it was just, I couldn't wrap my head around it. Like, usually when he's in a purple patch on return, it's not every single return. Like, somewhere in there, he'll biff a second serve return, and that was not happening. And yeah, the second set was hilarious because it lasted like an hour and a half. I kept thinking, if it went to a tiebreak, it could have been a 2-hour set, which is basically unheard of. Like, a freaking 2-hour set. And yeah, he had to work so hard to win that. And Nadal was very aggressive right out of the gate in the third. I think the first 2 points he won with smashes, which tells you how aggressive he was being. And like Jack said, only way was down. I think a dip was always going to happen.
Yeah. I'll do a little bit, or before I do a little bit of a fast forward, just an interesting stat for you. This is totally random, but I needed to look it up basically after I saw it. There was a game in the first set where there was basically Nadal served 4 times and got 4 unreturned balls from Djokovic. There was then another game in the fourth set where Djokovic did the same thing to Nadal. It's the second and third time it's ever happened on clay in their matchup, basically. I just thought it was such an oddity. I kind of wanted to find out why that, was as odd as it sounded. It's only happened one other time.
In 28 matches on clay. That's unbelievable.
That is an unbelievable stat.
It's quite crazy. The only other time was very oddly, the 2015 Roland Garros quarterfinal.
And that was Djokovic, I'm guessing, who had the unreturned serves?
It was Nadal.
Oh, wait. I remember what game that was, actually. It was a 3-4 in the first set. I think there were 2 aces in there.
All right, I thought you meant the 2015 one there, Owen. Yeah. No, you mean this one, right?
No, the 2015 one. I remember because I read
the 2015 one? Oh my
live
God.
report of it, and I remember the author was surprised because Nadal hit like 2 aces in the same game.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, I should do better things with my time. But yeah, I mean, it tells you how much their serves have improved, I guess.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, Nadal was able to rely on that a few times. Well, obviously not consistently, but it did win him the odd free point, where obviously it wouldn't have won him the odd free point, 10 years ago or so. Yeah, so I mean, the third and fourth were kind of an amalgamation of those two tactics for Nadal to take the third and Djokovic to go ahead. I'd quite like to fast forward to the sort of crunch moment in the fourth set at 5-3, when Djokovic had a couple of set points. The first set point, for those that didn't see it, was a pretty standard backhand cross court unforced error, and the second one was a backhand down the middle approach that Nadal was able to pass Djokovic down the line on the backhand with. Did you guys feel like Djokovic did anything wrong? I felt certainly the second set point was very well done up until maybe the approach was a little central.
But for me, I would say he did a really good job setting that point up. He used his trademark backhand angle, and it was a really sharp one, and Nadal was on the full stretch, and so I think he felt really pretty confident, and sort of felt like if he didn't want to go too close to the line and sort of give him a freebie there. So he went a little bit too central, in my opinion. But I also want to credit Nadal, because I was fully expecting him to go cross court on the pass, and so was Novak, because he was leaning to his right and fully anticipating another stretch volley on the forehand that he hit so well, especially later on in his career. And then Nadal just finds the open space down the line. But the first set point was more of just a regulation rally ball, cross court, backhand in the net, which I think, I guess he'll lament that later. But
yeah, you can see it in his face.
I think Djokovic will probably get more flack for this game than he deserves. Since the tension was through the roof, I basically wrote down what happened on every single point. And on the first point of the game, Nadal hits a drop shot winner, and then Djokovic hit an ace, and then Nadal hit a backhand winner, and Djokovic hit a serve +1, and then he hit like a huge serve up the middle. And I'm not going to bore you by going point by point, but like he was serving really well. It was like every point was being earned. And so the fact that errors happened didn't really shock me, because when Djokovic wasn't getting a great first serve in, Nadal was climbing all over him. And towards the end of the game, he had been really accurate with his first serve, but then he started to miss a couple. And you could like feel him starting to strain, because he knew he was in trouble and he knew he had to make those first serves. So when he made a couple dubious decisions under pressure, I was like, yeah, that was coming. Like, Nadal was raising his level. He had been in the previous service game. I think Djokovic was lucky that game wasn't more complicated, because Nadal made a couple basic forehand errors. So, and I think the break point at 5-3 kind of is almost a microcosm of the game. Djokovic hit a second serve, Nadal hit a really deep forehand, and then got a short ball, destroyed it, inside out winner. Crowd went wild. The crowd had also been getting more and more behind him throughout the set, by the way, and I think that gave him some more energy. I don't know if it negatively affected Djokovic, but I think it definitely uplifted Rafa.
Yeah, I felt like there was one other moment I very quickly wanted to touch on as well. There was another break point in there that Djokovic played perfectly. So he got that forehand cross court. Nadal sliced defense down the line. Djokovic played the drop shot at the perfect time. So instead of trying to attack cross court, he uses his favorite drop shot into the juice box, and he puts it away for a winner. I thought after that, this is Djokovic's set to win for sure. definitely. But yeah, and Nadal obviously been amazingly from there. But just obviously, as you say, Djokovic might get some flack, but there's loads of moments in this match where Djokovic played phenomenally well.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, I mean, no one else in the world would have gotten remotely close to winning that second set. No one else would have been up as close to winning the fourth as he was, probably. But I think this is going to sting because, and we were talking about this a bit before we started recording, like, he never loses sets like this. He was up 5-2. He had 2 set points on his serve, and it went to a tiebreak where he usually is great against top players. Won that set in a tiebreak last year against Rafa. Rafa hasn't been good in tiebreaks against top players. As of late, and
he's 0 for 11 since 2019 ATP Finals against Medvedev. Against
really?
top 10 players in tiebreaks.
Yeah,
that includes,
and
the Australian Open. That includes the Australian Open finals this year.
Yeah,
so the fact that he was able to play that,
and Djokovic lost 6 of the first 7 points of the tiebreak. Like that's not going to get it done. And what he did after that was amazing. I mean, he hit a backhand winner and then a service winner and then a forehand return winner off of a first serve.
That was totally like US Open
that
vibes.
Gave me US Open 2011 vibes. Yes,
the crowd barely reacted because they were shocked. I thought it was out, but then Nadal like immediately walked to the other side, and I was like, holy crap, he made that. Like, he made that shot. He made a first serve return winner that hit the line down match point against Nadal on clay. Like, what just happened? And then even on the match point Nadal converted, Nadal had to hit a backhand winner down the line, which I think you could argue is his worst shot. Like, Djokovic made Nadal play. He just waited way too long to do it. You're not winning from 6-1 down.
It was one of those ones that he sort of took from high up as well. I think we'd barely seen it the whole match and pulled it off at the perfect time. That's pretty much everything that happened in the match. I think we could probably talk about some of the other details of it. Conditions. We didn't really mention it. Do you feel like conditions made any difference whatsoever to the match?
I think they might have taken a bit of potency off Nadal's shots in the second set. But no, not really. And I didn't really say this. I should have. But I didn't because everyone was saying the conditions would have an effect. I was thinking, like, it's still Philippe Chatrier, right? Like, Nadal loves that place, whatever it plays. Like, it's still favorable for him, even if it's not, like, heat of the day, ball leaping off the clay like a bouncing ball or something. He was still getting time to hit his forehand, which is what he wants. So, yeah, I will say, like, late in the match, it did seem like they were having to expend a ton of effort to hit through the court. But part of that was because they were defending so well. So yeah, I didn't think the conditions played a huge part. Although I don't think Djokovic was really happy with them. I saw something where he was like complaining about the night.
That's odd.
So I think what a lot of people were sort of focusing on when it comes to the conditions, and I mean, this was the case in 2020 as well. Obviously, we got a much better version of Djokovic this time around than we did 2 years ago. So that must be said. But I actually think, even despite the low bounce, the pace generation that Rafa still has on his forehand and the versatility on that wing, it almost just doesn't matter. In fact, it sort of gives him a little bit of extra time in a way to set up for his shots and just unload. And he knows that his ball striking and his urgency to go with the down the line forehand just has to be that much more in these conditions because, of course, he's obviously, that's just physics, is when it's higher bouncing and hot sort of sunny conditions on Chartrier, Nadal's bounce will bounce higher and it'll bother several of his opponents, especially the right-handers on their backhand. But I don't feel like that was the big case in this match. In fact, it just
definitely
it just forced Nadal to play more aggressively and go for more earlier in points.
Yeah. Definitely, and I felt like, obviously it was cold last year, definitely, when they played in their semi-final, but it was, for me, the biggest difference was how Nadal was able to defend from his backhand corner so much better than last year, stop those sort of same patterns of play from playing out, and I do feel like he gave himself more chances in the forehand.
Yeah, and definitely served better as well.
Although I think Djokovic also returned even better than he did last year
for
parts of the match.
The only other thing I was going to say is I do also feel like people kind of forget, like, until Nadal kind of waned in the fourth set last year, he actually wasn't playing awfully. He was defending sort of iffy from his backhand corner, but there was still really good aspects of his game. Like he was still able to crunch the forehand down the line and stuff. It's not anything new. That's the thing. Like there was just so many other things going in Djokovic's favour that it was kept the scales balanced until he sort of ran away with it, basically.
Yeah, I think we all kind of underestimated how close that match was because, like, Djokovic won the last 6 games of the match, but until 2-0 in the fourth, they had gone toe-to-toe for 4 hours. And Nadal had set point in the third set. Like, that match was still swinging on a dime. And Nadal did a better job of taking his chances this year, which he didn't really do last year. He lost a lot of break points, which didn't really happen this year. I don't know if there was... I think there was only one game where Djokovic faced break point and didn't get broken. And he had 5 of those.
Really? Wow.
So that was a big difference. Yeah, I think 3-all in the second set was the only time.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to remember other ones, and I can't come up with any.
Yeah, that could be right. Yeah.
Isn't it funny, on set points in both of their meetings, Djokovic went to his favorite drop shot?
That occurred to me. That did occur to me.
Set point in the third set last year, and then
that's
here.
It's a great parallel. I think also the matches were either the exact same length or apart by like 1
minute.
Minutes.
Nadal took 1 minute longer. Otherwise, it would have been exactly 4:11. I was so hoping it would.
Honestly, if he had gotten a time violation sooner, this one could have been under 4 hours. But a very cool parallel with these two.
How do you guys feel the whole match kind of ties into? I don't want to say GOAT debate, obviously, but maybe a better question would be how significant you feel the match was.
I think for Nadal, like legacy-wise, I feel like it was almost bigger to not lose than it was to win, because I think if Djokovic had beaten him, and that's a third time he's beaten him at Roland Garros, he would probably win the tournament after this match. So that's 21, and that's 3 at every major. You can't argue against that. I already don't think you can argue against what he has. But I think, this is the first time Nadal has beaten him in a major where it was a dogfight in a really long time. I think the last time that happened was like the 2014 French Open, because 2020 was very one-sided. And so I think just knowing he can still do that is massive, both for himself and for his legacy. Because I think if he had lost that, a lot of people would have argued like, oh, he's declined so much that a win over him at Roland Garros means less than it used to, because he's not the same player. And I think this refutes that, even though he plays very differently than he used to.
Those were really good points. I mean, I'm trying to come up with another match like this where, Djokovic in the clutch came up just a hair short against Rafa, and I could really only think of the 2013 U.S. Open in the third set, where definitely there was a sort of he led by a break in the third, and then there was also a really pivotal game at 4-all with Nadal serving down the 40, and then but then sort of the next set was more of a runaway, whereas there were no sets like that here. But in terms of the actual debate, I think it's very significant for Nadal to have a significant edge in the Grand Slam race, especially given Djokovic obviously leads the head-to-head by 1 right now, but he also has many other things in his legacy in terms of the week set number 1 and winning every Masters twice. Had he won this, he would have had most likely, or still plenty of the tournament still left to go, but he would have had a really good chance to win 3 majors everywhere. And that would and if Nadal goes up by 2 or 3 in the major count, I mean, it's going to be hard to argue against him as well. So I feel like he did himself a big favor by shrinking the margins a little bit more and just keeping the debate very, very tight.
And I think in terms of the rivalry, can we take a second to acknowledge how cool it would be if they were tied 30-all, like the tennis score? That would be basically the coolest thing ever. But aside from that, it's kind of cool because Nadal led the rivalry until 2016. And then when Djokovic went ahead, he hasn't even let Nadal tie it up since. And Nadal has gotten really close. Like Wimbledon 2018, he was 5 points away from winning that. And if he had won that, he would have tied it. Last year at Roland Garros, if he had won that, it would have been tied. And that's, his favorite place to play. And now the next time they play, if it happens, he'll have a chance to tie it again. And I just love like their back and forth. It's so good. It's such a good rivalry.
I totally agree.
I
I
can't
think
get
one
enough.
more thing is I think we're kind of due for a classic on hard court now. Obviously, the thing is, with the rivalry, what I love about it is the parallels between the clay and hard. Just the way they both parallel each other, both at the French Open and the Australian Open, but also just in their rivalry dynamic, where I think it's 27 for Djokovic on hard, and it's 28 for Rafa on clay.
Mm-hmm.
So if Nadal gets one more win on hard court, then we're dead even, and they're 2-2 on grass, and it's like it would just be perfect. And Nadal hasn't beaten Djokovic on hard court since 2013 U.S. Open, and they've played 19 sets and 9 matches since, and only 2 of those sets have been a tiebreak. But I also feel like Nadal on a hard court, when they last played at the ATP Cup, they had a really great second set, which was a lot of fun to watch and very, very competitive. And so if they meet again, let's say at another U.S. Open, where Nadal actually leads the head-to-head 2-1, and he still has more U.S. Opens than Novak, that could be a very interesting plotline.
Yeah.
It's not impossible. Like, okay, he's in an absolute rut against Djokovic on hard courts, but we just talked about this match and we recognised the fact that the forehand, the big high loopy forehand, wasn't actually a massive factor in how the points played out. There are ways that Nadal could redline his game to beat Djokovic. It's not actually totally infeasible. I think serving, I suppose, Djokovic advantage Djokovic gets on hard courts is pretty big, but there's still stuff that could fall in place for Nadal to make things very competitive. Definitely.
Absolutely.
There is, but I think at the same time, the returning on hard court also does even more damage. Like, I think there are times on hard court when Djokovic is in a purple patch returning, Nadal can't get time to do anything. And then it looks like it did in the second set, but even more extreme. Like, I think, but I do want to say, like, I feel like as an accomplishment in Nadal's career, the fact that he has beaten Djokovic 29 times is up there with anything else, because I think people underestimate, in terms of X's and O's, this matchup sucks for Nadal, because Djokovic is the only one who can really punish his serve. Djokovic is the only one whose backhand won't break down. People have better forehands than Djokovic, but I think Djokovic is the only one really patient enough to do that looping cross-court angle thing. Djokovic is fast. He doesn't get tired. Like, it's a nightmare matchup for Nadal, and he's beaten him 29 times. I think that's as good an example of his never give up, like, always try to find a way through, always, like, change your game plan if it isn't working thing, because this rivalry could easily be like 45-14 or something like that.
Yeah, that's a fantastic point.
Just talking again about the hard courts, one other thing that just occurred to me is they're in the same group for the Davis Cup playoffs, and those playoffs,
are they? All right.
Serbia and Spain, I think, are in the same group as Canada, if I'm not mistaken, and those are supposed to be post US Open, so I'm really not sure if they'll both play it. I think Djokovic usually always commits to it, especially he likes to play for his country and carry the team at the end of the year in Davis Cup. And Nadal, it really just sort of depends on his health, because he's also won Davis Cup 5 times. So if we get a clash there at a neutral venue, Serbia versus Spain, on a hard court, I would still take that.
He'd like literally resurrect the Davis Cup, probably.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. It's kind of lost its in terms of the stature, in terms of the most important events, because of top players prioritizing their schedule and longevity. So it help elevate that a lot.
Is there anything else you guys would like to talk about within the match? The only other thing, I can't even remember if we mentioned it on air now, actually, was that Djokovic was a little bit miffed as he walked off court, didn't wave to the crowd. Did we mention that outside of...
That was before it started, yeah. I remember thinking it because Djokovic is, unfailingly classy when he loses a match. And so I was expecting a really nice, like, cuddly embrace at the net. And it was respectful. It was kind of brief, and he walked off quickly. Didn't wave, didn't sign anything. And I'm not saying that this was bad of him. Like, I would have thrown a tantrum. But I think this hurts him. I mean, this is a match I think he thinks he should have won. I think when he lost the third 6-2, he knew what he was doing, and he knew he had to win the next 2 sets. And I think he backed himself to do that. and he put himself in position to win the fourth set, and it didn't happen. So I think he's feeling away right now. He hasn't felt in a very long time. And
I mean,
that's interesting.
Djokovic with set points and hasn't converted them. I mean, when was the last time that happened?
Crazy. I mean, that reminds me of this 2018 French Open, where he sort of he walked out the court and he was really quick to do his press, and then he gave the famous line, "I'm not going to play on grass." And obviously, then he goes and wins Wimbledon. And so these kind of matches can really spur him on in terms of motivation.
They can, and I think in terms of pain, this is even worse than that Cecchinato one, because that was against a journeyman. This is against Nadal, like his greatest rival. Like you don't want to give him an inch. Like now Nadal could be up 22-20 in 5 days, and Djokovic is like, okay, I have to do this for another year, or like I have to win the U.S. Open this year or something. The guy won't go away. It's remarkable. I mean, his aura on a tennis court in terms of like the match is never over. Like Nadal is the fighter, but he's like Djokovic is the one who will make magic happen. And that I felt that even when he was down 6-1 in the tiebreak. Like I
know, so it was crazy of Nadal to just like close it out with an amazing again. It's just like only Nadal, it just felt like could sort of take that by the scruff of the neck and make it happen. With Djokovic in that sort of mood.
I don't even think Djokovic played a bad tiebreak. I mean, normally what he likes to do is he likes to go in lockdown mode and just not give his opponents any errors whatsoever in tiebreaks, and that's why he's been so successful since 2019 in them. But that's not what got him to that point in the match. So for him, he would have had to, and it was really Nadal who took it by the scruff of the neck, like you said, and came up with his vintage forehands down the line, and just really weathered the barrage that Djokovic was giving him from the baseline. And
that actually was something else I wanted to mention. From 5-3 until the end of the match, the Nadal forehand really took over things. Like he went into a purple patch almost out of nowhere, and it almost felt like the first set again in terms of the stuff he was doing with that shot. And Djokovic got a lot of them back, but it was just spitting fire the entire time. And
there was one I remember. Djokovic had a high forehand, inside out or inside in, opts to go inside out, and Nadal's still waiting there and absolutely kills the forehand for a down the line winner. That
was for 3-0 in the tiebreak, so pretty big.
That's
point.
The one that sticks out in my head. It was just crazy.
Yeah, and I think at 5-6, when he was serving to get into the tiebreak, the first point of that, Djokovic hit a pretty good forehand down the line, and Nadal did the thing where he slams it back down the same line for a winner. And it wasn't uncharacteristic, but I think it was the first time he had done that in the whole match. And I think Djokovic is also a master at kind of not giving him the right shaped ball that he can do that on. I didn't phrase that very well, but like a lot of people will hit shots to Nadal's forehand where he can do that. And I think Djokovic knows how to hit like the right weight or the right shape so that Nadal can't really redirect it easily. So when he did it for the first time, I was like, okay, his forehand is having a moment here.
As much as his backhand is definitely a linear strike, I feel like the way he's able to mix up the height and mix up the base, and sort of it's not like your traditional sort of flat redirect like you see a lot of players do. It's very much it's very much a ball that Nadal has a lot of trouble like timing when he's trying to go down the line with, and he just sort of has to catch it at just the right second before otherwise he'll be really late on the swing. And the fact that he was able to do that under so much pressure, I think it just speaks to how clutch he was in this match.
I actually had a question for you guys. I know we're kind of getting into nitty gritty again, so like whenever you want to wrap this up, but did you guys notice that Nadal was almost like pushing his backhand for a lot of the match? Like I thought early on he was pretty offensive, and at times later on he was offensive too, and he would hit it cross court and down the line, but for a lot of the match I was like, there's not really any pace on this backhand. Like I didn't think he used it as a weapon for like 70% of the match, which I thought was interesting. Like it's kind of wild to me that he won without doing that much, because he hit a lot of backhands down the line that were just really slow, that I think he could have hit harder and just didn't.
That was definitely part of his tactic, to mix in some slower, loopier balls or safer shots to get Djokovic being the one to sort of ask the questions from Novak, like, can you actually hit through me? Can you hit through my speed? Can you hit through my court coverage? Can you force me to go for the forehand down the line? Because it's there. I'm ready to hit it. It was there all day.
Yeah. I think it helped that was there at all, Vansh, definitely. because it was just such a reliable weapon throughout the whole match. So it took something very special from Djokovic to get up in the point if he was given the slow backhand down the line from Nadal.
I think what really actually helped Nadal is when he was down in the tram lines. Unlike last year, he was really able to explode and go back to offense because he was able to just slide ferociously into the forehand corner, and then just recover all the way back and hit the cross court backhand, and then set up a short forehand that he could do a lot of damage with. And then the way he was able to go inside out and then immediately rush the net and then go for an overhead smash. I think they both only missed one overhead smash in this match, and one came in the second set where Djokovic did the Djoko smash and just completely botched it.
That was I think that was actually the third set. It was on a pretty big point. I think Nadal was serving 2-1 15-all. So he makes that smash and he gets in the return game. And it just did not. I wrote down Djokovic.
And that was the game where he got broken, right?
No, that was Nadal serving. Nadal saved a break point and ended up holding, and then he broke again in the next game. So it was definitely a crucial moment. But yeah, I think I was so impressed by, both of their defense. Like, one of my favorite patterns in the match was like Djokovic would get stretched out wide to his forehand, and he would like crush the ball down the line. Like, I thought he hit a bunch of really good, like almost Del Potro-esque forehands, but kind of safer. And so he would like crush it down the line, and then Nadal would hit a running like squash shot forehands and then reset, and then they would keep going. That happened like 5 or 6 times, and every time I was like, these guys are still so good at defending, even at 35 and also 35. I think Nadal turns 36 in like 3 days.
That is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yeah. That's why my jaw was just dropped the whole time. It's insane. I think we should probably wrap this up soon, guys, or we're just going to be able to talk about it all night. I assume probably another 4 hours and 10 minutes of talking about the match is going to ensue unless I put a lid on it at some point. I'll wrap up there, I think, guys. Thanks very much for joining me. Thank you very much, listeners, as well, for listening this far through. If you want to catch any of either Vansh's work or Owen's work, I think the best place to catch them is on Twitter. Owen's Twitter handle is @TennisNation and Vansh's is Vansh2K. That's a guess. I literally don't know.
So it's
V2K.
V2K.
That's close. Vansh V2K. And yeah, if you want to catch any of my work, you can go to onlinetennis.uk. Thank you very much, guys. We'll catch you next time on the Online Tennis Podcast. Cheers.